Hey guys, remember when digital ID was being proposed, or rather enforced, during the C19 days? Well, we are back to that, but this time it's called the Online Safety Act, and they're trying to push it, starting in Britain, calling it the Brit Card. Check this out.
If you feel like privacy is no longer a right in the UK, do this one thing. The UK is entering a new era of digital authoritarianism. Keir Starmer is considering a mandatory digital ID scheme called Brit Card that would make us all reliant on a digital pass to go about our daily lives. Introducing this in Britain would fundamentally change the nature of our relationship with the state, eroding our rights and freedoms. And people in marginalised, vulnerable and minority groups are more likely to have reduced access to online services, particularly where digital ID is a requirement. It's been just 1 week since we've launched our petition calling on the government to reject these plans, and already over 20,000.
So 20,000 petitions at this point. This is about maybe a little under a month ago or something like that. At this point, it's over 500,000 signatures in the petition. And as you can tell, everybody in the comments is really not having it. If you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, essentially in July 2025, the UK government passed the Online Safety Act, which compels all tech companies to require everybody to self-identify before they log into the platforms. A huge example would be X, Reddit, Spotify, Xbox, Blue Sky, Telegram, and of course, all of the adult sites, and much, much more to follow. Now, you might say, oh, it's just to protect the children and whatnot, but that's the excuse. It's all a sham. The Online Safety Act in the UK is just the beginning. Similar laws are rolling out in the US, Australia, Canada, and the EU. These measures force ID checks, facial scans, tracking of your online activity, all in the name of protecting children. Now, the reason this matters is because political protests, sensitive discussions, and even harmless communities, like stop smoking forums, are being blocked. The government is using third-party tech companies like Persona with horrifying privacy policies to ID check you. Basically, the government is outsourcing this kind of work to tech companies like Persona in order to ID check you and store your data for years and share it with third parties. Again, this is not just in the UK, but generally in the Anglosphere, and EU governments are starting to push similar surveillance laws simultaneously as a little bit of a snowball effect, might you say. Now, these types of surveillance and censorship issues have been taking place for the longest time in places like China, the GCC, so countries like Saudi Arabia and the UAE, as well as Turkey, and a few other countries here and there. Now, besides signing petitions and voicing the outright rejection, as you can tell, everybody is really not having any of this. No to digital ID, no Brit Card for me, say no to digital money, digital ID, and no to open borders and globalism. Don't take the mark, it's a breach of human rights, and so on. Do not comply. So nobody is interested in complying, really. And the government is certainly not after your best interest. And you can probably already tell by the way things are heading already. The mismanagement of public trust and the enforcement of rules that do not make sense. How we disclose personal data. Check out this little tidbit in Persona's privacy policy. Legal and law enforcement. We will access, disclose, and preserve personal data when we believe that doing so is necessary to comply with applicable law or respond to valid legal process, including from law enforcement or other government agents. So the UK is working with companies like Persona in order to harvest your information and preserve it so that anytime you voice your opinion about anything at all, whether on Reddit, X, Discord, or any other platform that they will force into doing this, of course, you know, these companies will be facing up to 18 million pounds and more, or they will just have to cancel their service from being available in the UK. You can't have your service in the UK if you do not comply with the rules that they're enforcing here. And the rules are you collect information, you identify people, and you share that information with us. That is Of course, not something that most companies will disagree with, because it's also in the best interest of these companies to collect as much information as possible. But sharing it with the government is not something that people are going to be a fan of. Now, let's talk about the solution, because you certainly don't want to ID yourself and have to end up on a leaked list of data, like this most recent example with the T app, which is a dating app, I believe, for women, a dating/gossip app. I'm not entirely sure exactly what it is, but it's something like that. And thousands of images and selfies and personal data were leaked, so that's not so good. And so if you don't want to end up there, you're going to have to avoid having to ID yourself in the first place. Now, if you're in the UK and you're being compelled to age-check yourself and ID yourself online on Reddit or Discord or whatever it is, or adult sites, whatever it is, doesn't really matter. It's not the government's business what you do online and with your private time. A VPN is typically a great solution. Now, I remember when using a VPN was not necessarily the most mandatory thing, right? Like if I wanted to use a VPN, I might not use the VPN every day. I might just use it if I'm on public Wi-Fi, because it's a terrible idea to not use a VPN while you're on public Wi-Fi. Otherwise, you'd be compromising your data super easily. If I wanted to watch something on Netflix, I know that a specific show may not be available on Netflix. Like, as you can tell here, if you're in the States, Friends won't be available to you, even though it shows up in the search bar or in the more to explore here on Netflix. Ironically, I'd have to connect to the UK server on the VPN because Friends is available in the UK, for example. This applies to all other streaming services. I might use a VPN for gaming as well. So it's a great tool for accessing the international internet, meaning if there's a specific online store that is not available to you, you can make it available by connecting to the right location. So if I went to what is my IP address and gave it a refresh here, it should say that I am in the United States, specifically New York City. And that's not because I'm physically there, it's simply because I'm connected to the VPN here. Now, this was before, but as of July 2025, using a VPN is, in my opinion, at this point, quite a bit mandatory, especially if you want to avoid these age or ID checks. Meaning if you are in the UK or anywhere else where there's surveillance or censorship, you connect to a country where there's better laws, and then you can go to Reddit or X or whatever it is that you're trying to access without having to ID yourself over the internet. So it's no longer just I'm on a public Wi-Fi kind of thing, or, I want to watch Netflix, so I'm going to use a VPN. No, it's more about protecting yourself, encrypting your internet traffic, making it unreadable to your ISP or hackers or even government agencies, and not allowing anybody to know what you're doing online. It lets you bypass Online Safety Act restrictions without handing over your ID or face scans. And it keeps your communications private no matter where you are. Because without a VPN, your browsing history, your location, your online activity are all logged and traceable. Governments and ISPs can see exactly what sites you visit. Censorship walls like the UK's age gates block access unless you hand over your personal data, and public Wi-Fi becomes a double risk: hackers and government snooping. So at this point, you don't want to have a device that doesn't have a VPN. It's a huge disadvantage. Imagine if, of course, you're walking into a bar, you might have to show your ID. If you look particularly young, let's say, you're already over 18 or 21, depending on the legal age of your local area. But let's say you're clearly above 21, maybe you look young and you might have to show a little ID. It's fine. But imagine having to copy your ID every single time you walk into a bar, a supermarket, a mom and pop shop, a tech store, anything, any place you walk into, you have to not only show your ID, but you have to give them a copy of that. And maybe they'll have to take a picture of you as well and scan your face and scan your eyes and scan your whatever. And what's next? Scanning your fingerprints? I'm not sure about you guys, but this is not something that I would accept. And clearly, most people are refusing. No chance. So if that's something that you're not interested in complying with and you'd like to preserve your privacy, what you want to do, again, is I would recommend using a VPN. Now, you might be asking, hey, how about free VPNs? And what about VPNs? Don't they get access to my information? That is true. VPNs can access your information, which is why I wouldn't really use any VPN that comes my way. A lot of VPNs are incredibly shady, and I wouldn't recommend just looking up free VPN and downloading the first one that comes your way. If you're looking for a free VPN, even though I do not recommend using free VPNs because of reliability issues, I would recommend Proton VPN as the best free VPN out there. It's the most reliable. It's from the same company that owns Proton Mail, and there's no data cap, so you can use the VPN for as long as you'd like without having to pay for it. But there will be limitations, like only getting access to 3 countries, Japan, Netherlands, and the United States, I believe. You won't be able to stream, you won't be able to torrent, and you're only limited to 2 megabytes per second as far as speed, if not less, because all these privileges are reserved for paying customers. And as you might imagine, the free servers with Proton VPN are absolutely flooded, so they're even slower than usual, unfortunately. Not to mention that Proton VPN downloads, because it has a free version, soared above 2,000% at this point, which is huge. And this is obviously because of the Online Safety Act passing in the UK. Now, would I recommend the paid version? At this point, honestly, before pre-Online Safety Act, I might say like, hey, if you're just an occasional user and you don't really care about streaming shows and you just want a VPN to protect you every now and then, yeah, go with the free version of Proton. But at this point, I definitely recommend the paid version of Proton. I myself like to use Express. It's incredibly simple to use. It's very quick and it's super reliable and super consistent. And I like the simplicity of Express, personally speaking. Both of these VPNs are amazing. And if you're interested in other options, there's also Surfshark, by the way. And I'll link to Surfshark, I'll link to Express, I'll link to Proton VPN. I'll just link all of that in the description down below if you guys are interested, including some discounts to help you save a little bit more money. But essentially, at this point, your VPN is your digital bodyguard. And if you're not using a VPN, or at least if you don't have a VPN locked and loaded in your device at all times, you're at a major disadvantage. And so if you don't want to be, at least start with the free version of Proton VPN. This is for your own privacy and safety. If you don't want to buy a VPN, if you don't want to spend money there, it's fine. Again, at least use the free version of Proton. Get familiar with how VPNs work, and then you can decide if this is worth your money. You can get your VPN later on and actually enjoy all kinds of benefits that you get with the VPN, entertainment purposes and benefits besides the obvious security and the avoidance of ID check purposes, of course. Okay, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're interested in any of the VPNs, check the description. If you have any comments, if you want to talk about it, we can talk about it in the comments down below, and I'll see you guys